Hey there, I'm getting ready to install the door in my shower. I finished grouting it and now I'm ready to install this. And I thought I would show how I'm going to do that. The first piece to put on is this thing right here. And the very first part of that to do is to install the bottom pivot in the track. And this will go in here like this. And it's going to get screwed in over here, and there's going to be a set screw here. But first I need to get a heavy bead of silicone in around here so that it won't leak after I put it in. Now there's a screw that holds this in on the back, like I said before, and then there's a set screw that goes in the front as well. And with that set screw installed, I'm just going to clean up the excess silicone by smoothing it off and wiping it out of there with my finger. Now that I have the bottom pivot put on, I can fasten this side to the opening here. I'm going to center it basically right in this wall here. It's going to make a little bit of a mark up here. Not measuring it, just eyeballing it for now. And that'll tell me where that is. And then I'm going to use my level and then make another mark down at the bottom, and I can use those to line up the track. Okay, now I can put my thing in place and line it up with those two marks that I made on there. And I've got a marker here with a long point on it, and that's going to get in there for me to mark those holes. Next thing I need to do is drill these out. I've got 5 holes to drill. Unfortunately, this is porcelain tile and it's very hard, so I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to drill. I've only got a regular carbide drill bit here for this. If not, I have another trick up my sleeve that I can try. But in the instructions they say to use a center punch to nick the tile to get the bit started. Of course, that only applies for glazed ceramic tile, not for this type of tile here. But I really wouldn't recommend that anyway. You really run the risk of breaking the tile, cracking the tile across when you do that. Better to just take your time, put the bit in place, and start drilling. Eventually, the tip of it will wear in. Just be patient, that's all. Okay, that's not going very fast at all. I've barely broken the surface, and I can tell this is getting very hot. So I think I'm going to try something else. Now the something else that I want to try is not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure. I'm going to be using the angle grinder with the diamond blade on there, and instead of drilling holes, I'm going to be cutting slots. Alright, just put them in like so, push them in. Believe me, this is not my idea of perfect, but it'll work. I don't have any doubt. Because I've done stuff like this before. Never had a problem with it. Silicone goes in there to fill up the gap around the plug. And that'll actually help anchor it too. Line it up with my marks that I had there before. And just to be on the extra safe side, I'm going to take the silicone and I'm going to pump some into the holes where the screws go. And that'll fill up the space in between the plugs and the track and add even more strength to the connection. Now with that side frame successfully installed, the next step is to put the bottom track on, and the instructions say to cut that 4 inches shorter than the opening is wide, and my opening here is 35 inches, so I've marked it, and now I'm going to cut it with the angle grinder again, except this time I'm using an abrasive blade. And it's cut that short because it has a clip on the end that fits around that pivot and then the other end goes against the other side. Now to secure this in place, there are no screw holes, so there's no drilling here, thank goodness. But I gotta put a thick bead of silicone on there, and that's what holds this down in place. I also need to put a bead of silicone around that bottom pivot where it meets the tile before I put the bottom track in. On this model of the door, there is what they're calling a door install block, and what that does is it holds that track down while the silicone sets, and it also supports the weight of the glass door as you're putting it in. And that gets installed about 8 inches from the non-hinge side. It doesn't say to do this in the instructions for some reason, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm running a bead of silicone down the frame on the inside only, and that'll keep any water and other mess from getting in there. At this point in the installation, I thought it was best to leave these parts to dry overnight and then resume installation in the morning. It's the next day. I already got started by putting the hinges on the door, and then I put the door in the opening, and then I adjusted the hinges to move the door over to close the gap on the other side over here. Now the instructions say to mount this side over here before installing the door, but I don't believe in doing it that way. They say use the level just like you did over here. I prefer to have the door in place though, and then close it against this and use this to mark where it goes. And that way I know for certain that it's lined up properly. And I'm just going to use a marker to make a couple of marks, very much like I did on the other side over there. So that I'll be able to attach this exactly where it's supposed to go. Now, same deal as on the other side. I can take the strip, line it up with my marks, and then I've got my marker here. I'm just going to mark out where the screw goes. Luckily, I've only got 3 in this one, but I still have to do it the same way as I did the other side with a grinder and just cut those slots. But this time I'm not going to use a plug because the screws will be long enough to reach the framing behind the tile backer. Okay, I got all 3 slots cut and I'm ready to screw this first strip on. But before I do that, I want to get some silicone in those slots. Helps to fill them up. Not really necessary, but it helps to fill them up like I said on the other side. And it also will help to anchor the screws, and every little bit helps. And this one has slots on one side, and that's supposed to be on the inside, and that's to attach to this part, which is adjustable in and out. So I gotta pay attention to that, but I've already got it oriented the right way, so that helps. I also put a big hunk of silicone down on the bottom for this thing to sit in. Even though it didn't say to do that in the instructions, I did it anyway, thinking it couldn't hurt. Now I can drive the screws in. Hopefully I drilled deep enough with my angle grinder. Make sure it's lined up with my mark. That looks good. And I put one in the middle and then one in the bottom as well. Okay, I've got that in place. Now I can get this strip and put it inside this one. This slips right into it. Push it all the way in, and then I can close the door and line it up with the magnet that's on the door. And then I've got these small screws to drive into those slotted holes like I talked about before. All right, that's basically it. I just had to put the weather stripping, I guess you could call, along the bottom there in 2 places. There's 2 pieces. And I'm going to put the doorknob on now. And this is just this little thing like this. And that just screws in through the hole that's drilled in the glass. And again, even though they don't specifically say this in the instructions, I'm going to caulk this seam on the inside here. I'm also going to caulk all the way across the bottom on the inside. And that way, there's no way for water to get in behind this trim. I'm not going to caulk it on the outside though, since that would trap any water that happened to get inside.